Okay, superb. Okay, so just so that we know, the session will be recorded. So please, if you don't want to be recorded at any point in time, kindly let us know. But the session will be recorded so that those who are unable to join can probably listen to the recording as well. Bound to confirm, can you hear any background noise or am I audible enough?
You're audible enough.
Okay. Okay. So just to be safe, sure. Okay, so good day, everyone. Good day once again, or good day. So welcome to this session. It's going to be a highly interesting and interactive session where I'm going to be talking about one tool which I've actually come to love, which I fell in love with, called Power Automate, which is the tool which I'm going to talk about today. Now, before I proceed, I just want to make sure, can we all see my screen? Can you hear me clearly? Can you all see my screen? Can you all hear me clearly? Feedback. Okay. Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you everyone. So yeah, thank you and welcome to the session. Now, the session is going to be highly interactive and highly beginner friendly. So if you've been using Power Automate before, you're also welcome. You may learn a thing or two, maybe a few tricks or there. If you've not used Power Automate before, you're very much welcome as well. So the session is tailored towards both beginners and maybe slightly intermediate people as well. Now, how this session is going to run is I'm going to introduce you to Power Automate. Going to talk a bit about the Power Platform community, and I'm going to take questions and feedback as we proceed. I hope that's good. Now, there's one key thing which I like saying in all my sessions, right? If you had to introduce yourself for $1 million, for $1 million in just 1 minute, how would you introduce yourself? So very quickly, you can drop it in the chat. I would love to hear about my audience. Maybe something fun about you, what you like, something fun about you, or something interesting about you. Or if you had to summarize yourself in 1 minute, how would you go about doing that? Okay, so you can type in the chat if you're uncomfortable talking or if your background is noisy, you can quickly type it in the chat. Okay, so I'm starting to see responses coming in. So just quick introduction about yourself, maybe where you are or what you like doing for fun, where you're joining us from as well. That would be nice. Okay, so I'm seeing a really lengthy introduction going on in the chat. Okay, so just give us 1 more minute and I'll read the introductions I can see from my screen before we proceed. Okay, so I can see Benga. Welcome, Benga. Benga is a junior data analyst from Lagos, Nigeria. Nice to meet you, Benga. Okay. Okay. So I've received Benga's response. I've received. I believe Delvis and Ade Kunle are still typing. Okay. So if I was to introduce myself, so here's a bit of a resume about me, or I'll call it a profile. I'm Joseph Fadero. I have a couple of certification. I find myself working in different suits or different hats dependent on the problem I have to solve. And if I'm to summarize myself, I think I would summarize myself as a problem problem solver. Currently, I'm part of a wonderful team of people which are hosting this community. The Citizen Developer HQ, the core mission is to empower young people gain local tech skills. So in regards to Power Platform, it could be Fabric, anything that required little to no level of code. That is our core core goal. And so that's why we're having this simple session for us today. So nice to meet everybody on this call, and it's I look forward to connecting with you on LinkedIn, Twitter, Twitter as well. So Joseph Fadero on LinkedIn, on Twitter. So you can send me a connection. You can message me regarding Power Platform, Microsoft Fabric, Excel, SQL, or just general data analytics. Okay, so now that we've had the introduction out of the way, so what's our agenda for this introduction to or Automate 101? Now, it's important to note that this Automate 101 is going to be part of a series, rather, which I'm going to record and release later on the Citizen Developer HQ YouTube channel. Now, for the core topics which will be covered is introduction to Power to automation and Power Automate basics, types of flows and creating basic workflows, working with connectors and integrations, building simple use cases, managing and monitoring flows, introduction to conditions and control actions, introduction to approvals in Power Automate, and best practices in Power Automate. So that's like the major agenda for the Automate 101. Some of them will cover it in this very session, and I have an interesting case study which I want us to try out today. Now, without wasting much of our time, I'm going to introduce you to a friend of mine. His name is Mike. His name is Mike. So Mike is a graduate of computer science from MIT. Mike was recently employed by Joe Analyst Limited as an IT analyst. Mike is a young and energetic worker who puts it all into his tasks. Now let's meet Mike after 6 months of working in his organization. Mike constantly hits his required target every month, but Mike starts feeling like his work was mundane, the same 9 to 5 old routine. Mike, after a year, Mike feels he's tasked with way too many repetitive tasks and he isn't using the full potential of his mind. So Mike slowly starts to feel frustrated. After a year, doing the same old 9 to 5 routine, doing the same very task over and over again, Mike is obviously frustrated. So this Mike, his frustration can be seen by all. So why is Mike frustrated? Mike was hired as an IT analyst, but he hasn't had the time to focus on his core role. And the reason? Everyday employees meet him to help with various tasks. Some days he's given the same old repetitive tasks on a day-to-day basis. Now, my question before I proceed is, how many of us have felt like Mike at every point in time? Maybe it could be if you're not currently working, it could be school, it could be um it could be your current place of work, it could be maybe an activity that you're doing on a day-to-day basis and you feel this is highly repetitive. And I'm sure the one key thing about doing repetitive tasks is you tend to feel frustrated. You tend to feel frustrated. So how many of us have been in that sort of situation? And please, if at any point in time you cannot hear me or you cannot see my screen, kindly signify. So I can see many times I hate doing boring repetitive tasks. Okay, so that's from Aisha and Aisha Tola. Okay. Okay, so let's just give one simple secret. So Mike was me at a particular point in my career where I felt I was being saddled with the same old routines. Oh, probably send an email, probably create a document, probably analyze this data on the same daily, weekly basis. Now, what that made me do was one thing is I like walking. Should I say I like something I call smart laziness? So smart laziness is in the sense of I don't consider the theory of doing the same thing over and over again just to show that you're working, just to show you that you're working. So after a point in time when I was feeling the situation of having to do the same old repeated tasks on a day-to-day basis, I decided, you know what, how can I automate some of these processes? And that's what led me to this amazing tool, which I'm going to talk about today, called Microsoft Power Automate. Power Automate. Now, I don't know how many of us on this call currently have used Power Automate before. If you've not used Power Automate before, it's also super. If you've used Power Automate, you're also welcome in this class as well. Like I said, we'll be building a simple case study. Maybe it's something you've thought about before. Maybe it's something you don't know how to execute. That's what we're going to be executing today. So right now, okay. Right now, to get to Power Automate, we are going to go to I can just go my Google browser and search for Power Automate on my Google browser, and I hit enter. Now, Power Automate, so if I click on this, the very first link by Microsoft, I have Process Automation Platform. So this is the first interface to be navigated to if you have not used Power Automate before. Just a bit of an overview of what this interface is. This is the Power Automate interface, and if you go through it, you can see some of the use case scenarios which you can use Power Automate for, and it explains some of the benefit of using Power Automate, like optimize processes and uncover business automation, automate across nearly unlimited system, desktop apps and websites with AI and digital robotic process automation, and very much more. So you can go through the features, the key features that Power Automate has, which is the overview, the AI features, desktop flows, cloud flows, tax and process mining, and you can also go through the use case scenario. So use case scenario, if you don't know how you can possibly apply it to your life or your business, you can go through what others have done with Power Automate as well. What others have done with Power Automate as well. So this is the very first place you get to Power Automate. Now, if you want to get started working with Power Automate, so you can click on this try for free interface, which will the give you an option to sign up Power Automate. For Power Automate. Now, for you to sign up, you need a work or school account to sign up for. So you can sign up for Power Automate for free. You need a work or school account. It doesn't require your bank account, your bank details to proceed for signing up to Power Automate for free, but you need a work or school account. Now, at the end of this session, I'm not promising though, but for if you have probably issues creating, if you have issues signing up for free with a Power Automate account, you can please reach out to me on maybe LinkedIn, or you can reach out to me via the user group on how you can get started with the, maybe we can set a free account for you. So that being said, the moment you signed up for Power Automate, so following this process, you keep your work or school account, keep some details, and you can confirm your details. You can go ahead to sign in. Now, it's also important to note that specific Microsoft 365 subscription already comes with Power Automate. Like they are, if you are using the E5 Microsoft subscription, you already have Power Automate by default. You're paying for the software, but you're probably not using it, or you're not maximizing it as you should. So if your organization has an Office 365 account, if it's E5 or I think the business premium, you most likely have Power Automate available for you. So you could either speak with the IT team, or you could just click on sign in. So it could be part of the packages you have with your organization as well. So also, it's important to know, please, if you have any questions, you can note them down. You can drop them in the comment. I'll check through before we end the session. So the moment you're done with exploring the interface, we can just go to sign in to Power Automate. Sign in to Power Automate. Now, so inside this Power Automate um, that you can see on my screen, you have various tabs or various navigation buttons. You have the Home tab, which you can see a lot of interesting inside. Like one key thing is this learning for every level. So even beyond this program, you can go ahead to go through this part, and you can go ahead and decide to learn Power Automate through this as well. The next thing is you have a section for pricing, so you can check and you can compare Power Automate price with others. The price is relatively more affordable than than some other competitors. Now you have community forums. Now this is something I'm going to be talking about before we end the session. Highly important and highly recommended. So joining communities. You have the documentation where you can read up. If you're the type that like reading, I recommend this. And you have feature requests that share feedback and ideas about Power Automate. You can give suggestions. So for those who are seasoned users already, and maybe you have a flow that you've been trying to build and you don't know how to build it. Maybe you know how to build it, but the process is not so straightforward. You can go ahead to give suggestions based on that. So right now, so that's what you can have in that's what you have in the home interface. You can go through any of these tabs to explore more. The very first, the place where you spend most of your time in is this create interface, which I'm going to talk about last, ironically, this create interface, which is where you spend most of your time in. But you have a section which is highly useful and highly recommended, especially for beginners. You don't know what to do. You don't know how to go ahead to start building your flow. You don't have any idea on how you can, what process, the way you can go ahead to work with your automation. You can go to this template section. Now, under this template section, there are various templates that have been pre-built in Power Automate for you. What the template is they are pre-built flows created by Microsoft teams or members of the Microsoft team that allows you to easily replicate it for your own particular business problem. So if your task is to move a document from after somebody fills a form, probably send an email to the person and store the information in SharePoint, you can go ahead to click on this template. If your action is to convert a Word document to a PDF, you at specific intervals, you can search for the template you want. So template is this good section which I recommend to beginners after they've learned the fundamentals of flows, that they should go ahead to check templates to know how to go ahead to start building their flows. Because there's no point with creating a system that is already there, unless if you want to customize it to your taste. Now that's something you can also do with templates. You can go ahead to customize templates easily. So templates is that section. Then we have learn. So learn is similar to that other section which I talked about before. So learn takes you to Microsoft Learn, where you can go through the documentation about Power Automate. Then you have a section called the approvals. Approvals is not a concept we are going to talk about now doing in this call today. But what approvals does is you can create, if you have a process where you need somebody to give a go ahead before a particular process can start, that typically requires an approval flow. And under these approvals, you can see the approvals you've received, the approvals you've sent, and the approvals history. Now, solution is also an interesting concept in the Power Platform ecosystem. So solutions are ways where you can properly share your particular flows, share your particular apps, or your particular flows and applications you build using the Power Platform stack. So if you build a flow, your Power Apps, your Power Automate, you can share them via solutions. And solution is also a nice and neat way to manage all your processes in your flow. Now, one key concept which I didn't talk about initially is environment. So please, you can note all these things I'm talking about down. The recording will also be on YouTube. And if you have any question, please jot them down towards the end of the session. So environment is a place which houses all your flows and your apps, your tables, your tables in the Power Platform ecosystem. So think about environments like, for you to live in a, okay, so to be able to easily explain environment, I'll just say in your maybe you're staying in an estate, for example, right? In your estate, you live in a building. So think of your environment as like a building. So a building which contains all your properties, all your all your luggage, all your bags, your equipment pertaining to you. So that's what your environment is. And environments are housed within something called a tenant. So tenant is like your estate. So think of your tenant like your estate. So tenant is like your organization ecosystem. So that's what tenants are. Now, for the sake of building building your first flow, you don't need to know the nitty-gritty of environment. But when you need to know the nitty-gritty of environment, is you can build specific flows in specific environment, and they also are useful for you to, when you want to move a flow or a application from one process to another process. That is what environment, from one building to another building, environments are useful for that as well. So I don't want to spend much time on environment. I'm just stating the what you need to know right now for Power Automate. And with that being said, I know most of us on this call were like, when will we finally get our hands dirty on building our first flow, which is something I have in mind for us. So don't worry, we're going to get there. So So there are so in regards to Power Automate Flow, now one key thing we need to note for Power Automate Flow is that we have two key types of Power Automate Flow. Two key types. So under these three ways to make a flow, if you look closely, I'm saying we have two key types of Power Automate flow. We have something called cloud flow, and we have something called desktop flow. Those are the two key ways, two key flows we have in Power Automate. So Power Automate flows are flows that are done on Power Automate on the cloud. They typically they typically require you to sign into they typically require you to be on the Power Automate. They are typically built on the Power Automate on the cloud, and they are various business processes that do not require control of your personal laptop or system. Now, what I would say for desktop flows, on the other hand, is you can see desktop flows as like your macros in, let's say, like your macros in Excel. That's if I'm to summarize it. Now, desktop flows are more technical than that. And when you're talking of desktop flows, that's where you get introduced to the concept of something called RPA, robotic process automation. So that is not a concept you need to know now, but it's important that you know that desktop flows allow you to, if you have things, let's say you have specific processes that probably have to work on your, maybe your laptop, or if you need to get information from a website that doesn't have an API. API is the back and forth communication from one location to another location. If you need to get information from a website that doesn't have an API, you can use a desktop flow to go ahead to do that. Now, cloud flows can also help you to get information from websites that have APIs. You can get information. You can do processes that are generally on the cloud as well with Power Automate Flow. If your document is in a SharePoint, if your document is in a Word document online, if it's on OneDrive, Power Automate online can help you to easily automate that process. So I said there are two key types of flows we need to note. We have cloud flows and we have desktop flows. Now, where we are going to be spending today on, because I want to go away from all this talk. I don't like ironically, I don't like all the talk. I don't like talk. I like getting my hands dirty, and I'm sure that's what most of us on this call want. We want to start getting our hands dirty. So under this so this cloud flow, we have three core types. We have something called the instant cloud flow, scheduled cloud flow, and we have the automated cloud flow. Now, what differentiates these three things is a concept called triggers. It's a concept called trigger. What differentiates these three things? It depends on how they are triggered. How they are triggered. That's what differentiates your automated cloud flow, your instant cloud flow, and your scheduled cloud flow. What is instant cloud flow? You have a process you do maybe in your organization, in your business. You have a process you want to automate in your business, and you want to control, you want to be the one to say, you know what, I want to probably click on a button, and once I click on the button, it probably sends this document from your email to, it probably send a document from your email to your manager. Then your manager has to approve it. It now updates your Excel workbook. That is what, that is like how instant cloud flow works. So you're controlling how your flow starts. And triggers is what start up any flows in any type of flow in Power Automate. So your trigger is like you have a gun and you click on a button. That's what your trigger is. Your trigger is what kickstarts your Power Automate flow. So for cloud flows, they can be triggered in three different ways. One, you are the one that directly controlled, you perform that act, you are the one that directly controlled how your flow is triggered. That is what an instant cloud flow is. Scheduled cloud, if you want an automation to run at a particular time, if you want to send mails, people's birthday mails at their particular birthday or birthday, schedule Cloudflow works like that. So schedule Cloudflow based on a particular time, a time period, a particular date, month, year. So schedule Cloudflow works like that. Now, automated Cloudflow on the other hand is based on an event occurring. Based on maybe somebody added a new file to a particular location. Maybe somebody created a new file in a particular location. Maybe somebody just sent a document to you. You want to create an automation that would run based on when an event occurs. That's when you have automated Cloudflow. But instant Cloudflow is you want to control how the flow is going to be started. So that's what that's how best I'll summarize these three type of flows. These three type of flow. Now, the very first step to understand Power Automate, I'll first say you first start with the instant Cloudflow to first understand how Power Automate work. Then, once we are done building and covering some key basics on instant Cloudflow, we're going to do an interesting case study with automated Cloudflow. Then um, we'll call it, we would, we'll call it a day. Okay. So before I proceed, I just want to see if my audience are still following. I've been talking for a while. I just want to be sure if my audience are still following. So right now, I just want to ask a question. So if I'm to schedule a flow, if I'm to create a flow that would that will send me an email it will send me an email every 3 o'clock. Send me an email every 3 o'clock. Which type of these flows would I use? Which type of flows would I use? Okay, so I'm saying from Idayat scheduled. Okay, scheduled. Okay. So if I'm to create a flow that would run when somebody creates a new Word document on my OneDrive, what type of flow would I use? Maybe a flow to alert me when somebody creates a new Word document on my OneDrive. What type of flow would I use? Okay, so I can see I'm getting response. I'm seeing automated cloud flow. Automated. I'm seeing instance. Okay. It's kind of like a divide. So I'm seeing some people on the fence of automated. I'm seeing some people on the fence of instant cloud flow. Instant cloud flow. So very quickly, I'd like to hear from maybe one or two people. So I'd like to hear from two diverse opinions. So the people that are saying instant. So if somebody can raise their hand, and somebody that is saying automated. So if you are for instant, let me see if I have somebody. Let's say Bali Keys. If you are for instant, you can raise your hand. Why do you think instant? And I will get from Delvis, why do you think automated? So Balikis, why do you think instant? Okay, so go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon. So I think it's instant because it happens because how will I put it? I don't know how to explain myself here. It happened because an event also occurred. The edits can be confusing with the other one, the automated part of it. But instant happens immediately something is triggered. Immediately someone submits a form, instantly you get a notification. I don't know how else to
Hmm.
explain that.
Okay. Okay. So let me hear from Delvis before I say give my okay, go ahead, Delvis.
Okay, can you hear me? Am I audible, please?
Yes.
Okay, so why I think is automated cloud flow. is because for instant cloud flow, you have to trigger it yourself. You have to trigger the process yourself. But this one, you are not triggering the process. An event triggers the process. So that is why I think it's automated cloud flow.
Okay, so excellent point, Delvis. So I think the issue was maybe like Balikis mix the two up in my explanation. So, but Delvis rightfully stated it. So I said automated is triggered. Automated is triggered by the designated event. So if you also look through my screen, automated is triggered by designated event. Instant cloud flow is triggered as needed. That's when you need to trigger the flow. That's when you use an instant cloud flow. An instant cloud flow. So I'll first be starting with instant cloud flow to just cover the little of the basics that you need to know about flows and working with flows. Then the last thing we have to do is an interesting case study, which is what I'm encouraging all of us to be on this call. And maybe you can try out with automated cloud flows. So right now, I'm going to click on Instant Cloud Flow. Now, for you to begin to create your flows with Power Automate, the moment you select the type of flow you want to do, the reason I'm using Instant is I want to be able to control how it is triggered. That's also another thing you can note for Instant. You want to be able to directly control how it's triggered. So under this, the first thing you need to give your flow ideally is a flow name. I'll call it Instant 101. Instant 101. That's what I'm going to call it. And the moment you give it a name, you can select a trigger for it. Now, under this instant cloud flow, you have various types of triggers. You have various type of triggers under instant cloud flows. So triggers is what kickstarts your flows. So this when Power Apps cause a flow. Now I know most people get confused about this, especially people that use Power Apps that, oh, shouldn't this be automated? Shouldn't this be instant? But the idea is when Power Apps calls a flow, what it does is when a button, maybe somebody click on a button in the Power Apps to start the automation, that is still technically an instant flow because you're like directing how you want the flow to run, So, but for this demo, I'm going to do manually trigger a flow, the very, very basic of the basic. That is flow button for mobile. Flow button for mobile. The moment I do this, I can click on create. It's also important to note that I could have clicked on skip and still select the trigger later on, but I'll do it the one and I can click on create. Can we all hear me? Can we all hear me and can we see my screen?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, so sorry about that. I think my network disqualified me a bit. So the first thing we have is manually trigger a flow, which is the first. So can you see my screen? So what I have here is something
Yes,
called
I can.
So what I have here is like your flow, where you see your flow process going on, your flow Canva, it may have a more technical name, but I tend to call it like a flow Canva, where you can go ahead to start building your flow running well. Now, under this screen, you have various set of buttons that you can go ahead to explore. But the first thing which I'm going to go on is Can you see this? Under this, you have a section called manually trigger a flow. Manually trigger a flow. This is what this button is doing. Manually trigger a flow. Now, in Power Automate, there are three components of, or should I say two main components of flows. We have the trigger and you have action. You have action. So I'll go over what I said. In Power Automate, you have two main components of your flows. You have a trigger. A trigger is what starts, and if what starts your automation. Your automation must have a trigger. Something must start your automation. Either you are doing it manually or it's triggered at a particular time, it's triggered at a particular place. Something must start your automation. That's what a trigger is. Now, an action is what you want to happen after your automation has started. That is what an action is in Power Automate. In Power Automate. So we have something called, I'll go over it again. You have something called triggers and you have action. So at the very first thing, when you have your very first thing is a trigger, manually trigger a flow, which is the very first thing we have. Now, if you want to add what should happen when I've manually triggered a flow, Power Automate is very, very, should I say, to a large extent, especially if you are not doing a too complicated process, is very, very intuitive and easy to work around building flows. Now, for me to add, the next step I'll add to this is after I've manually triggered a flow, I'm going to add an action. And the action I'm going to add for this, so if you see, I'll just go over it again. So I'll click on the plus button and I'm going to click on add an action. Add an action. So right now what I'm saying is after I have triggered the flow, I want something to happen. I want something to happen. Now with Power Automate, I think I don't have the current number off on my head, but I think as at the last time I checked, there were more than, I think, up to 1,000 plus connectors in Power Automate already. And what do connectors mean? So I'm saying specific keywords which I will employ you to note, or maybe when you're watching the video, you can note them down. Like I've said, you have your triggers, you have types of flows, you have actions as well. And now I've introduced the concept called connectors in your flows. What are connectors? So connectors are, so see connectors as a way in which your automation speaks to a particular application in an outside place. So your connectors work with the APIs. So what do I mean by that? In Power Automate, they've already you already have certain pre-built connectors. So connectors in the sense of you are connecting Office 365 with Power Automate. If you want to have a action or a step that works with from Office 365 to, that's from Outlook to Power Automate, there's a connector that connects Outlook to Power Automate, So why am I talking about connectors now? Specific action, each action you want to take have been grouped into their various public connectors or controls in Power Automate. Each action, every action you want to take have been grouped into their connectors. So what do I mean by that? If you want to add an action, maybe something should happen based on an Excel document, or based on an Excel document, you can click on the Excel Online Business connector, and when you click on the Excel Online Business connector, you can see the various actions, the various things you can do with the automation. For example, I can delete a row, I can get a row, I can get a worksheet, list rows present in a table, run a script for a selected row, update a row, add a row into a table, create a table, create a worksheet, get tables. That is the actions I can use. This is with Excel. Now, if I want to see, what can I do with SharePoint, for example. I can scroll down and I can click on SharePoint. SharePoint. When an item is created, that's when somebody creates a new item in SharePoint, I can see that. When somebody edits an item in SharePoint, created or modified, I can see that. When somebody checks on a file in SharePoint, I can add an action based on that. When somebody create a file, I can add an action on that. When somebody create items in SharePoint, I can add an action on that. Now, for those who may not know, SharePoint is like the back end or the back end of your Teams application. So it's like a site that is very, very good for collaboration and storage of files and materials. So apart from SharePoint, you have OneDrive. So well, OneDrive is still kind of technically in SharePoint, but slightly different. So if I click on this, if I want to do something based on OneDrive, I can click on OneDrive for Business, and I can see the various actions I have under OneDrive for Business. So for this very first demo, now, like I said, based on what you want to do, you can easily search through the connectors. That's if you want to do a automation that involves Teams, um, Forms, Excel, you can search through the connectors if you have um, actions that work for them. Now, also, an addition is that if you cannot see any action for your particular flow, or if you want to get web data from a website and you cannot see that particular website listed here, you can create custom connectors in your Power Automate. Now, that's not something we are going to do right now, but I'm just adding things to note on a need to know basis. So for this demo, what I just want to do under this instant cloud flow is introduce us to a simple concept called um expressions with Power Automate. So right now I'm going to add a compose action. So under this compose action, I'm just going to select. So you see, I just searched for the action I wanted, and I'm going to click on OK. Now, the reason why I'm using this compose action is compose is very, very useful for like when you want to debug a flow, or if you want to view the output of a specific dynamic content in a previous step, and you don't want to probably add it directly into your automation, but that is what compose can allow you to do. Now, compose is not I wouldn't say compose is what we are going to be using largely today, but the idea of compose is I want to use compose to drive off another key concept we have in Power Automate called dynamic content and expressions. Dynamic content and expression. Now, these concepts are very, very easy. Now, I know I've been saying a lot of like maybe technical words, but they are very, very easy on a simple sense if you look at it. So for this flow, I've added a compose action. Now, under this compose, I have a section called inputs. And this is classified under parameters, under your parameter section. I have a section called inputs. Now, before I get into this input, I want us to go to this manually trigger a flow. I'm just going to add, let me do, I'm just going to add a text, for example. A text, I'm going to do name. Let me do first name. Add an action, last name. Add an input rather, last name. So what this means is this information will be requested to the specific person that is triggering the flow to provide. That means I must provide the first name and last name when I'm running the flow. And once I've set these inputs in my trigger, in my next step, in my action step, I can reference the output of the input in a particular trigger or action, and that is what we call dynamic content. Dynamic content. So let me just summarize what dynamic content is. Dynamic content is the output. I classify dynamic content as the output of a previous trigger or an action. That is what you have dynamic content as. So let me explain it in a simpler term. So right now, this simple process we want to do, manually trigger a flow. That is when somebody, maybe I want to ask somebody for their first name and last name. Now, when the person provide this first name and last name input, I want to get the result of what this first name and last name is, and I want to reference it in this particular input, and that's what dynamic content do. So dynamic content gets you the output of a previous trigger or an action in Power Automate. So under this compose, the first thing I have is this input parameter. So under this input parameter, if I click on this lightning key, I have dynamic content. So if I want to see information based on this specific user that is searching it, with this manually trigger flows, it comes with different dynamic content for it already. So if I can see the person's full address, I can get the person country, the city the person is in, the state, the latitude, the longitude, the email of the person, the username, the dates. I can get all this information from the dynamic content. And how I went to dynamic content again, click on the input, click on dynamic content. So right now I'm just going to search for, let's say I call the first name. First name, I'm going to add it here. First name. First name. And I'm going to probably, under this input, I'm going to add dynamic content last name. Last name. So I have something like this, first name, last name. So this is the action that I want to take. So I just want to display, after you've asked this person for the first name and last name, what is the first name and last name the person provided? So that's what this compose is doing, first name and last name of the specific user. So the moment you are done adding your dynamic content or adding your actions to your flows, the next thing is you can do a save. You can save your flow, and then what you need to do is you can test out your automation. The moment you save your flow, you can click on test and you can manually test your flow because the manual trigger. I'm going to click on test. So right now, see, it's asking me for my first name. I can type Joseph, last name, Adero, or so. And I can click on run flow. I click on done. The moment I've done that, you can see it has run the flow successful. And if you see under this compose, we can see a section called Joseph Fadero. It has combined those two names as my son name, Joseph Fadero. So what I can do with this information is I can reference this information again, this dynamic content again in another action. So I'm going to edit this and I'm going to call this maybe my full name. How I edited this is at the top icon, you have a full name section. So that's where I typed it. You have a section to edit it. The moment I've done this, I have the first name and last name. I have this as my full name. Once I have the person's first name and last name, I want to add this to a spreadsheet, or I want to add this to a spreadsheet. Now, what I can do is I can click on start a new step, add an action, and now I can search for maybe Excel online. And I can do add a row into a spreadsheet. Add a row into a spreadsheet. Add a row into a spreadsheet. So the moment I've clicked on that action, now each action have different views that you can see in the action. Once you click on the add a rows into a table, that's the Excel action. It asks you for the location of the table. The location has to be on an online source. It has to be in a SharePoint or your OneDrive. That's the location it has to be. The document library, that's the document the file can be located in. The file and the table. So it's also important to know Power Automate works with tables. Works with tables. So your data should be in a table. Your data should be in a table. Like it works very well with tables. So your data should be in a table. The moment I've done that, I can now go ahead to add the data into my table. So that is with that on how I can. So this is just a simple flow which we've created on how I can get information from somebody, combine the information to maybe create a full name, and I can add the information into a spreadsheet. Very simple, a simple process, maybe simple process which we have a Power Automate. Now, the one other key thing we need to note before we go into our case study, is expressions with Power Automate. Expressions with Power Automate. Now I'm going to give us a very, very simple use case scenario for expressions. Like I said, this video is going to be recorded. So please, hope you're taking down notes. And if you have questions, please ensure to ask questions towards the end as well. So this video is going to be recorded. So you can always go through the video as well. So the one other thing I'll be talking about is expressions with Power Automate. Expressions. So what do I mean by expressions? So if you want to do things like addition, subtraction with Power Automate, you can go ahead to do addition and subtraction with Power Automate. So let me just do a typical example with manually trigger a flow. And under this add and input, let me add numbers. I'm going to call this number 1. And I'm going to add an input, add a number again, and I'll call this number 2. Now, so instead of under this section, if I wanted to add the summation of number 1 and number 2 together to give me score, let me call this score. I can come here and I can do Control A and call this score. What I'll need to do is I'll get rid of these inputs. Under these inputs, you see, I have a section for dynamic content and I have a section for formula FX. So I can click on this FX and under this FX, I have various functions I can use with Power Automate. So if I want to combine two texts together, I can use a concat with Power Automate. And the beauty of it is that the formulas and functions are similar to Excel formulas and functions. So they are similar to Excel functions. So if you already have a background in Excel, you should be good to go with Power Automate as well. So if you scroll down, you can set for the function you want to use already. And the beauty of it is it also gives you explanation on what those function does in Power Automate. So right now, I just want to do an addition. I just want to add 2 numbers together. And the moment I've selected this add, I can come here, click on my dynamic contents. Let me search for number 1. That's the first item I want to add. and number 2. So the moment I've added this, I can click on add. So that adds the expression to this. Now I can save this and I can test my flow. I can test my flow. So manually trigger a flow and I can test it. So right now it's asking me for number 1. I can call this maybe 6 or 7. 7, I can call this 9. And when I click on run flow, the score should provide me the information about the summation of my first and my second number. So if I click on score, can you see this? This is 16. This is 16. That's the combination of my first and my second number with Powerautomate. So with that, we've covered we've covered various things already, which is the using what the action is, what the dynamic content is, what is a trigger, and using simple expression in Power Automate. Now, I would advise you can read up more on this. There are more expressions, there are more explanation on what action and trigger is. But to sort of get us gingered on a perfect use case scenario for Power Automate, I'm going to show us on how we can build a recruitment application, a recruitment system with just Microsoft Forms and Power Automate. Microsoft Forms and Power Automate. That's all we are just going to need for this demo. So how we can build this with Microsoft Forms and Power Automate. So first of all, so for us to do this, right, I can go to my Microsoft Forms and I can create a simple HR recruitment form, HR recruitment system. So this is a form which I've created beforehand before this video. So, but you can go ahead to create it. It's just very, very simple request. So your first name, what's the person's first name? What's their last name? What's their email address? Their phone number to contact them? What position are they applying for? Who referred them? What's their current pay rate? Expected date of resumption? How many years have they worked? The expected salary, and they should upload their resume. So this is what this HR recruitment system are. Now you can go ahead to do this process with maybe your Google form, your Microsoft form, but for ease, I'm just using Microsoft form for this demo. So what motivated me to do this demo, which is what I wanted to do throughout this session. Now, what motivated me to do this demo is, how many of us have faced various situations where you probably apply for a job and you probably get this unfortunately email, or you even face a situation you made an application but you didn't even get any response. I think those ones are more those ones tend to be more frustrating than even the ones that probably may send unfortunate emails. So the question which I asked and the question which I thought about was how what will it take people to adopt a simple recruitment system? And for companies that do a recruitment system, how do they go about doing this? Now, I'm not saying all companies do their recruitment process using Power Automate to do this. Some people use a lot more expensive application to do something we can easily do with Power Automate. But with this, I want to kind of gear our heads towards where we are and where we can go with knowledge in Power Automate. So I hope we can all hear me. Can we all hear me? No, I've been talking for a while. So, but can we all hear me and are we following? Uh, let me see.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay, so right now we are going to, I'm sure, the part which we would gain a lot more knowledge on is this part on how can we build this recruitment system. So the very first step is, ideally you must have created your Microsoft Forms. You must have created your forms process with your Microsoft Forms, and you can ask it those key fields we asked, or you can go ahead to uh, tailor it to your specific need and process. So the moment you've done that, you can take a look at your forms again, just to be sure you have the right field. Now, for this, what we want to do is, in the typical recruitment process, in the normal recruitment process, when somebody submits a form, for example, when somebody submits a form, the person gets the other party, the person that submitted the form should either be notified if they are going to be considered for the role or they are not going to be considered for the role. Are we following? Are we following? So that's the ideal system of how recruitment should be. So it's either when you apply for it, they look through your profile and they say this person is not fit for the role, or this person is probably fit for the role. Fit for the role. So that's the process. So what we are going to do is, we need a situation of when somebody submits a form that we've created, we need Powerautomate to determine if the person is going to be hired or the person is not going to be hired. If the person is going to be hired or the person is not going to be hired. So for this, we're going to click on Automated Cloud Flow. And under Automated Cloud Flow, I can call this recruitment, give it a name. And under these triggers, you can see something called when new response is submitted. That is for Microsoft Forms. So when somebody submits a form in Microsoft Forms, you want an event to happen. So when a new response is submitted, I can select this. I can now then click on create. Create. Now, the very first thing we need to note is when a new response is submitted, the first thing we need to do is we need to select what form are we looking at. So I'm looking at the HR recruitment system. That's the form I'm looking at. So under form ID, I need to select the HR recruitment system. Okay. So the moment we've done this, when somebody has submitted a new form, which is HR recruitment system, that is noted. The next thing, what we want to do is, the person has submitted the form. We need to see what the person filled out in the form, the response the person gave in the form. So I'm going to add an action, click on add an action. The moment I click on add an action, I can click on get response details. So I said anything you want to do, you can just search for it under the connectors. Is either I scroll down and I search for forms under the connectors and see what I can do with forms, or I can search for the specific action that I want to take place. If I already know what I want to do. So the next thing I'm going to do is I want to get the response from the form. So if I said get response, I want to get the response from the form. I have a section called response details, get response detail. So I'm going to click on this. Now for this get response details, so you see, I can, for the form ID, I can specify the form I'm looking at, which is the HR recruitment system. Now, the response ID. For this, I can now reference the dynamic content of this when a new response is submitted. So if I click on the dynamic content, when a new response is submitted, it provides the response ID. So that's why we needed that trigger. So it provides the response ID. So this is saying when a new response, when somebody submits a form, I want to get the response the person had submitted in my forms. So the moment I have the response the person has submitted, now I can now go ahead to determine which staff do I want? Who are the people that I want to work in my organization, or who are the people I don't want to work in my organization? Now, let's take a look at this recruitment. Let's take a look at this recruitment process, for example. If I want a situation where you want people that are applying for the job, you only want to probably consider people that are applying for the job that have maybe 3 years of experience, or people that are applying for the job that have maybe 3 years of experience, and maybe you want to say the pay they are asking for is not above $100,000. It's not above $100,000. How can we go ahead to filter these forms, and how can we go ahead to send the emails to these people in a way that is only the people that are receiving, it's only the people that are paying, that have like 5 years of experience or more, that will receive this information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do edit flow. Now for this, anytime you need to set a situation of, if this is the case, something should happen, or if that is the case, something else should happen, you need to add a condition action. A condition action can easily help you to check if this is the case. If this is available, it should go to this place. If this is not available, it should go to that place. So we're going to make this as simple can get. So I'm going to click on insert a step, add an action, and I'm going to add a condition. So I'm going to add a condition. Now my condition is stating, what do I want to set the condition to? So I want to set the condition that, so if I click on this dynamic content, I can see more. And what this showed me is the output of whatever the person answers. So it's telling you the answer of the questions. That's what this get response provide. The answers of the question the person answers. So right here, if you recall, what I wanted to say is we only want to consider people that have worked for 5 years, and the expected salary. Let's first even use 5 years first. We only want to consider people that have worked for 5 years. I'm going to type 5 years. 5 years. So people that have worked for 5 years. And what we have for condition is the years they've worked is equal to 5. We are saying the person is equal to 5. Let's say greater than 5. So somebody that has worked for, or greater than or equal to 5. Greater or equal to 5. So under this action, I can select this and greater or equal to 5. So somebody that has worked for 5 years, we can send the person an email stating congratulations on meeting the first stage, blah, blah, blah. Congratulations on completing the first stage. Kindly come for a physical interview. Maybe that's the process of the company. So I'm going to add an action under this true. So if this is true, if the person has worked for 5 years, let me add an action. And what I'm going to say is, I'm going to say Let me send an email. Send a mail. Or send mail. So send an email. So I have three various options. I can send an email with normal Gmail. I can send with Office 365. Office 365. So I prefer to use the Office 365. It saves me a lot of headache. You can use your Gmail as well. Your Gmail, it should still work. It should still work, but I'll use the Office 365 and I can do send an email. Send an email V2. So under this, I'm going to send this to I'm going to send this to myself. So let me just send this to, or rather, I think it will be best instead under this send an email, we're going to send it to the person that submitted the form. So I'm going under this to, I'm going to switch it to the email of the person that submitted the form. So I'm going to search email, respondent's email, or the email the person provided. I can use any of these two. Let me use the email the person provided. So the response we're going to send to this person, and let's call it physical third stage interview. Now, under this email, I can go ahead to start typing my message. So if I want to reference the person, maybe hi or dear, let me use dear to make it professional, dear. And under this, I can reference the person's first name. So dear, this, the first name of the person. Thank you. Congratulations. Let me use congratulations on passing. Congratulations, you have been selected for the physical interview. Kindly come on Monday. Regards, Joe Limited. So something, so something like this. So congratulations on passing. Congratulations, you've been selected for the physical interview. Kindly come on Monday. So what we are saying, and just to keep us up to date, is when somebody submits a form, we want to check has the person worked for 5 years. Now, if you see this and we can add more condition. Maybe has the person worked for 5 years and is the person is the person previous pay this amount, or is the person expected salary way above our budget or within our budget. You can go ahead to start adding more conditions into this. If I click on new item, I can add a rule and I can add a condition. And what and means is all of this must be true for you to go to the next stage. So now I can just delete this. I don't need this. So right now we're going to just check has the person worked for 5 years? If the person has worked for 5 years, we should bring the person for the third stage interview. Now, one other thing we need to note that we can do in Power Automate is we can copy actions. So once you've created an action before, if you want to reuse this particular action for a different set of flows, I can right click and I can click on copy action. And what it does is under this false, I'm going to click on this plus button, paste action, paste action. Now, all I have to do is let me change this subject. Rejection rejection mail. unfortunately, was the unfortunately fortunately we decided to go with someone more qualified for the process. So let me just keep it like this. Thank you. So rejection mail. So this one is a rejection mail. Now I said you can always rename your title of your action. I'll call this rejection underscore mail. So this rejection mail, I can rename this to approve interview mail. So can you see this? What we are saying is, let me just explain this in English, because it's also good to know what you want to do in English. When somebody submits a new response, I want to get the response that the person submitted. When somebody fills that form, I want to get what the person filled. I want to check if the person has worked for over 5 years. That's the candidate we want. That's the candidate we want. If the person has worked for less than 5 years, maybe we don't want the person. Let's send a rejection mail. 5 years, let the person come for an interview. That is what we're saying with this process, this simple process we built. So I can go ahead to save the flow. But one key thing which I have to do for this flow to run, if not, I will have an error. Well, two key things. First of all, I'm going to go back. First of all, let me just turn this off. So two key things which I have to do for this flow to work and for it not to have an error. So one thing you need to notice, especially when working with form in Power Automate, is if the field you are looking at in your form is a value, you still need to use an expression to tell Power Automate that this is a value. If not, so let me just show what will happen if I don't do that. So I'll just let me just skip the years back. Years worked. So right now, I'm just going to save the flow. I'll save the flow and test it so that we can see the error that will occur if I just go ahead to test the flow. So there are various ways I can test the flow. The easiest way is, let me fill this document, for example, the HR recruitment. I'm just going to click on preview. Joseph, whatever. Joseph. gmail.com. Position, data, fair name. I can leave that current period and just type something. Expected resumption dates. You can also do it based on expected resumption date. So there are a lot of interesting things you can do based on this date. So years worked. Let me say like 6 years, for example. expected salary. Let me use something like this. Now, the section, another thing we can do with Power Automate, maybe we won't do it now for this flow, is you can also scan through the person's resume with Power Automate to get information from the resume. But with this, I can click on Submit. Click on Submit. Now, let's go to our Power Automate flow page. So I'm going to refresh this. So can you see this field? And the reason why this field is because of the data type. The data type is, so if I read this error, I'm saying unable to process template language condition line, but the template language greater than or equal to expect two parameters of matching types. Can you say matching type? So it's saying I'm trying to compare a string and an integer, which is not the case. So for you, it's important I just let the error show so that we can see something we need to do before we go ahead. So under this condition, instead of keeping the year worked here, I need to use an expression that will make sure it is in a number format. So I can just use the int expression, right? Int expression, and I can reference the dynamic content of the years worked. The years work, and I can click on add. The moment I've done that, click on save. Now I can click on test. Let me test it automatically with the one that failed. So I'm going to test it with the one that failed. Let's see what will happen now. So can you see your flow ran successfully? And what this did is, if I go to my email, I can, it's just I don't want to show my email on this call. If I go to my email, I would have received that email from which I have already received it. So via my mobile, I've received that email stating my interview mail. So that's for this first process. So this will send it to only based on the interview, the person that needs to come for the physical interview. Now, for the person that, if the condition was false, if you remember, I kept 6 years, so that's why we have interview mail going out. If it was false, I wouldn't get this interview mail. Rather, I would get the rejection email as well from that. So that's how you can use, that is use case now of how you can use Power Automate to go ahead to start building onboarding applications, recruitment application. The use case scenario is a lot more bigger than this. The use case scenario is a lot more bigger than this. And unfortunately, we cannot cover and we cannot over exhaust all the use case scenario today. I've tried to explain as much need to know concept which I feel we needed to know, which I feel we needed to know for this call. Now, before we call it a day, and before I start taking your question, is now the key thing: what is next for you, and what should you do? Now, so one thing I'm going to introduce us to is something called the Power Automate community. So under the Power Automate community or the Power Platform community. Now, if you want to grow and if you want to learn the Power Platform well and you want to also showcase what you know and your skills in the Power Platform, I highly recommend you spend a lot of time on this community Power Platform page. Now, one key thing that you need to note on this Power Platform page is if you have issues, specific issues with maybe a flow, an app you've built, and you need a place where you can ask questions, you can reach out to people, ask questions on a flow you're working on a Power Apps you're working for, and you want experts in the sense of expert reply. The response time is normally, I don't think you can drop a question there and you won't get a response in less than 24 hours because there are various people, like people that are super users, the MVPs, super users like myself. Super user is like a designation awarded by Microsoft based on your contribution in this community. So what you need to do is on this community you have various forums. So if your problem is in Copilot Studio, if it's in Power Apps, if it's in Power Automate or Power Pages, you can click on any of these pages. Now you also have this get started. You can get started with the community, get involved, you can learn more about it. But let me take what one benefit I myself have had with the community. So I'm just going to sign into my account and my credentials. Just going to sign into my community account. So under the account which I have my community Power Platform profile, I can see if I go over to my name, my profile, you can see various, just loaded. So it's network. So if I go to my profile, you can see, I can see various badges. Now, the beauty of the community, asking questions, you get badges from asking questions. Even answering questions, you get badges, you get recognition from answering questions, and posting solutions as well. You get questions and answering questions. So if you see on my profile, it states my rank on the community and some of the things I've got from the community. If I go to achievement speaks about the contributions I've made to the community. Some of them involve answering questions, some of them involved liking posts, and some of them are a lot more than that. Now, the beauty of getting like the super user recognition is there's some certain should I say certain perks to it and certain abilities you can do in the community, which you wouldn't normally be able to do as a normal user in the community. And how can you get that? It's just by really engaging in the community, collaborating. You can create blogs in the community. You can join discussions. You can help somebody else with a problem. You can read through the news. So if I come to more community news, I can read through the latest developments in the community and the Power Platform space. Space like this is a news created to congratulating the super users. And just like what I said the other time was, if you have questions and you need people to answer it, these are like people you can that most likely may be able to help with your question. So you can tag their user account. My name is among them, and some other people are there. So this is the Microsoft Power Platform super user community. Now, the very last thing I wanted to say is if you are not currently on our user group, I would encourage us to join our user group. So beyond this, my session today, which wasn't meant to be a lot of talk, it was meant to be a lot of practice. but I hope we learned a thing or two from the session. Is beyond my session today, we are going to be hosting various sessions and various sessions in our community, and we may be sharing some very, very useful resources as well. Now, for joining this call and for staying to the end, I don't know. I'm feeling like um, maybe a communication will be sent to all those that I'll send out a form. So please, all those you stayed on this call to the end. So please, let's fill the form before we go. So I don't know. I'll just say let's fill the form till we go. So these are user groups. So you can join our user group if you are not currently part of our user group. Now I know I've been talking for a huge load of while. I don't like talking, but this was an introductory class, so I wanted to take charge of it a bit. So before we go, I'll be taking questions, comment, and I'll drop a form. It's just a feedback form. You can fill it. That's fine. You can fill it so that I can get your details as well, so I can send some resources to you as well. Yeah. So feedback. Go ahead. So Balikis, I can see your hand is up. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you very much for the session. I had a question when you were creating the flow. My
Okay.
question is, because I noticed you didn't take us through that part where you had to add the recruitment form to the Power Automate. So how was Power Automate able to suggest the name of the form when you were creating the action or the get response details?
Okay. Thank you for that. So if you recall, maybe I didn't elaborate on it so well, but if you recall, I said we have something called connectors in Power Automate. So connectors are how your one application speaks to another application. That's if I'm to summarize how I interpret it.
Yes, I
It's
understand that.
yeah, it may not be the literal definition, but it's like how one application interacts with another application. So Microsoft has already pre-built a connector from Microsoft Form to Power Automate. So what it does is it requires you to, maybe it's something I should have showed initially. For those of you that will be taking, maybe using this as a practice case study, it will require you to connect to the particular source that you want. So if you see currently now, you have a section called this is connected to a particular email. This is my particular Office 365 account, a particular response details. My forms is connected to this. So based on the fact it's connected to this, it allows you to filter based on all the forms I have in my Microsoft Forms. I hope
Okay,
I
please,
don't
can
know if
you
you
take
could.
us through how you were able to connect it?
Okay. So connecting it is very simple. So if you add an action, so let me try to even change the connection of this. It's the same process to add, it's the same process to change. So if you are first of all adding an action you've not used before, which is what you people's situation may be, you can go ahead to create a new connection. What the connection we just asked you to do is, let me click on add new, for example. It will ask me to sign in to my Microsoft Forms account. That is what it's asking for. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. It will just ask you to sign in to your Microsoft Forms account. Or
Okay.
if and for all your actions, you have to be signed in to them. So let's say the Gmail as well, you need to be signed into your Gmail account. So to just ask you to sign in to that particular account you need to work with. I don't know. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Okay, so more question, more feedback. So Delvis, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, Joseph, for the session. Um, I have two questions. The first one is Power Automate available for people who have Microsoft 365 subscription for single users. That is the
Okay.
first one. Then the second one is how can data analysts use Power Automate for their tasks, especially in for Excel and Power BI? Those are my
Okay.
questions. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So the first one, first um let me first go to it. So there's a table where they have the Microsoft 365 accounts as in subscription plans that supports. That's Power Automate by default. Now I know at the very least you can click on start for free with your maybe with your personal without your email address, which you mentioned. But let me see. Um, there's a particular link. Maybe I'll try to find that link and share it with you. So it has all the licenses which supports Power Automate for the business. Now for your other question, now the use case scenario is humongous. Like for Excel, for for data analysis for Excel and for all others. Right now, I just wanted to touch the surface with something which I found interesting. Now, let me give you a use case scenario for it and one thing I've used it for. Now, I had a situation um where I had to get information from email. Like I had to get people's information from email address. Like I don't know if you've seen all these websites where uh the website that their forms send it as email. Like it's not a Excel document, the back end or the end result of the form. So it's when the form is filled, you get an email with the responses that has been submitted. That's how the website works. So the responses that were submitted was sent in that email order. So I had to create because the issue was before people had to go through those names and email, enter it into a spreadsheet. Enter it into a spreadsheet. And when they enter it into the spreadsheet, they needed to now consolidate that information to create a report as well. So I just thought of this is something simple that Power Automate can do. So what I did was I got the information because the email always follow that particular structure. I structured the information from that particular email address, those information, those line items I wanted, kept it in a spreadsheet, kept it in a spreadsheet that I wanted to have, and now use a mix of Power Query as well to do a little bit of cleaning and loading the data into into Excel. So that was a simple use case now, which I wanted because they needed that data because the information also included the values, it included different things. They needed that data to be able to do their analysis. And imagine somebody when you are getting the information, when anytime somebody makes a payment on the platform, imagine how many times somebody has to be counting that information. So Power Automate in that situation saved both time and it saved a lot of money. That's a use case now which I used and which one thing I was very very much proud of. So using Power Automate to serve as like the data gathering process for your Excel or your Power BI. Now another thing Power Automate does is so if I go to, let me even just go to templates, for example. So for Power BI, you can use Power Automate to refresh your data set. You can use it to do, so let me search for Power BI templates, for example. Uh, so if I search under Power BI templates, can you see all the actions you can do? You can add rows to a data set from Microsoft Form directly using Power Automate, into your Power BI. Like you don't have to have it in Excel before you load it to Power BI, directly from Microsoft Form into your Power BI. You can use Power Automate to create streaming data sets. Streaming data sets is in the sense of, like I said, that form directly. The current issue is that if you want to analyze maybe form with Power BI or Excel, you have to be clicking on maybe the refresh button based on that. But with Power Automate can eliminate that refresh button process, and it will be automating it live and stream process. So you can also export a Power BI paginated report, um, add a row to a particular SQL server, send reminders to perform a Power BI task. Also, you use Power Automate for alerts. When you are working with alerts, alerts in Power BI, what alerts means is maybe it's based on specific occasion, maybe when specific threshold has been met, you want specific actions to be taken. That's what alerts typically do in Power BI. So you can use Power Automate for alerts. Another the use case scenarios are, I won't say almost limitless, but another use case scenario you can use Power Automate for is, like I said before, if you want to get data from website, a website that doesn't have an API. So Power Query itself wouldn't easily be able to connect to that data set. You can use Power Automate to help you to get that data from that API, to refresh your data, to load it to your data set. You can use Power Automate to do that. You can also use Power Automate to to schedule like refresh of your normal Excel reports, to schedule refresh. That's using like maybe your Power Automate desktop. You can use it to schedule refresh of your normal Excel report, and you can. Like I said, the application goes as far as how you can think it. If you believe your process is repetitive, you believe your process is repetitive, and one thing I want, one thing I should have said, or I wanted to say at the start of it, is if your process is repetitive and you can map out the step-by-step process you normally take, Power Automate Power Automate can possibly help you to automate it. If you don't know how to go about automating it and you've gone through the documentation, you're still struggling, you can always reach out to me as well on to know if it's a process that Power Automate may be the best choice, or maybe there's another tool that could work with it. I hope that's clear.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Joseph.
So any other question, any other comments?
Yes, hi, sir.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, I want to thank you very much for this awesome opportunity. And my question is, the actions on the connectors, are they limited or unlimited? And if they are limited, how can we create our own actions? And my second question is, do you have a YouTube channel? Or maybe you can tell us what channel to check out.
Okay. Thank you for that. So that's an excellent question. So first of all, these videos will be uploaded on the Citizen Developer HQ YouTube channel. I personally also have a YouTube channel, but the Citizen Developer HQ channel, the channel we are going to use for the community videos. I've created a video before on getting started with Power Automate, so it's something you can go ahead to look through. Also, what I want to do is I'm going to share a form right now. So everybody on this call, so please try to fill it. So what I'm going to do is based on the people's based on your email and stuff you feel, I could also share some amazing resources as well. Also, I want to know, are you part of the user group? Are you part of the user group? So on the user group, I'm going to be dropping resources there as well. So please, let's fill the form before we go. It's just a simple question. Your full name, comment, how likely you're to recommend us. Just a simple data collection process. So in regards to your first order question, so are the connection limited? Power Automate keeps on adding more and more connectors that you can connect to, but yet there's a specific to your Power Automate. Hello? Yeah, sorry about that. So I said you can go ahead to add connectors to your processes. You can go ahead to add connector. Now the process of adding connector is basically jump into. Sorry about that. I think my network is working. So I said I wouldn't say you should immediately jump into creating connectors, but fill out that those information on the user group. I will share because of your specific request. I will share under the resources section. I will share how to do that with videos or available in the channel. I hope that's good.
Question was actually like say now Excel connector, like
Mhm.
the actions that we can perform on Excel connector, is it limited or how can we create our own? That's what I was actually asking about.
Okay. The actions are the actions are not really limited. So I'll say not really because in um the sense of they basically covered most of the tasks most of the tasks you would ideally simply need to do with with um with the action. Now for creating actions, that's a more technical case. You can create connectors, but creating actions, there are workaround on using another action to carry out a task that, let's say, a task that you cannot find in the same action. I don't I want to explain this in a way that I don't go too technical as well. So what I mean in that is, let's say for example you want to do something in Excel that you cannot see an action that straightforwardly do what you need to do, but there are workarounds, and that's the beauty of Power Automate. You can go ahead to use specific actions that can allow you to end up doing what you need to do in Power Automate. But and that's why going through YouTube is also good. If you search through your process, you'll see somebody that has created a workaround around that problem. But if you believe that action is important and needs to be added to Power Automate, that's why I said the community is important. You have a section where you can submit ideas. Tell Microsoft this is something that needs to be added to Power Automate, and Microsoft used to check it, and you can get people to vote. If you have a brilliant idea and you believe should be added, you can share it with me. Me myself, I can upvote it and I can share it with other people, other people in the community so they can vote for it. And the more votes you get, the more attention Microsoft gives the idea you submitted. I hope that answers it.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay, I can see Aisha.
I'm
The
sorry,
form
please.
didn't
Is
ask for
the
email address.
citizen group open to everyone?
Yes. It's open for
Well,
all.
please, how can we join the
Uh,
group?
I did this.
so okay. So for the group, I don't know if you saw the flyer for this post. So you can also go to my LinkedIn. You see on the flyer for this post, you can see the link to join the group
Photo celebrate.
uh,
In fact.
on this post.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, somebody just raised an important question. There's no email address. That is true. So how did I? So let me quickly add the email address field. So please let's quickly fill this form and we can go can go as well. Maybe after I fill the form, maybe I could also share the user group. Okay, so okay, so any other comment? Please let's fill the form. So it's just feedback that I want to get, and like I said, okay, so I can see responses already. So I'm guessing the responses. Okay, somebody was nice enough to add the email to the. So please, if you are still on the call, I don't mind you filling it again to add your email. That's fine. Okay, so thank you everyone once again. It has been an awesome time in this session. I hope you learned a thing or two today, and look forward to seeing you in subsequent sessions. Thank you. Aisha, I can see your hands is up. Okay, I don't.